Hello and welcome to another edition of Josh Wants to Talk About Movies. I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you pesky kids and your mangy dog. Scooby-Doo, a franchise that's lasted about almost half a century. How does it last so long? Well, today I'm going to be talking about it with a good friend of mine, Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hi.
And we're going to be talking about specifically the 2020 iteration of the Warner Brothers animated film Scoob. So, Brian, why do you think I brought you here on this discussion today?
Well, it's because I'm the only other person that you know who's seen this movie. I watched this movie. I just sort of made a rash decision to see this movie with this format of watching new movies that were supposed to be in theaters, and I don't know. At the time, I felt swindled. I felt like what I paid to see the movie is more than I paid for any other movie just to rent.
For on demand, $20 to rent, because Scoob came out right when COVID just was in the heat of it and theaters had to close down. Scoob was originally for a theatrical release. What's the real stinger though, Brian? Like maybe less than a month later, they put the movie on HBO Max.
Yeah, they put on HBO Max like right after I paid $20 to see it. So I think I was just a little irritated. I don't think that my beef with this movie has anything to do with the actual movie.
Before we continue, I want to read your Letterboxd review real quick. It summarizes pretty much everything I feel about the movie, and I just think it's really funny. And he goes, if you look at Brian's Letterboxd, he goes, voice actors got screwed over again by casting celebrities in their main roles. Frank Welker being the exception, but he might be contractually obligated to be in every movie with an animated voiceover. It's sad to me that studios don't want to do a Scooby-Doo movie that's centered around solving a mystery. That's not what's needed fixing in the franchise. It's worked for them for 50 years. The Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe can still work extremely well without bypassing the central ideas of this property. To be continued. Truthfully, they really did have me thinking that Muttley straight up died, which would have really opened me up to the concept of Saturday morning cartoon characters being canonically dead. I'm still optimistic about the future of this cinematic universe. I paid $20 to see this movie. So Scoob 2020 follows the regular old mystery gang as they're out and about solving mysteries, but this time Shaggy and Scooby are involved in a dastardly plan by was it Dick Dastardly?
Yeah, Dick Dastardly.
They're involved in one of Dick Dastardly's chaotic plans to get a hidden treasure in a secret location. Along the way, they meet up with other Hanna-Barbera characters from all across different parts of their cartoon universe, and they eventually have to stop Dastardly and save the day. So going off the bat, before we really dive into like the deeper stuff that I think you and I want to talk about, what did you like about Scoob? Was there anything that you like that the movie provided?
Yeah. The thing that stands out for this movie is the same thing that's been sticking out with most of the Warner Animation Group's latest releases, is that their stuff just looks really good. To me, it feels like the most cartoony, kind of like bring you back to that Hanna-Barbera era of
Especially when you see
cartoon making, but in a 3D animated format.
Especially when you see like the opening Scooby-Doo Where Are You, they reanimate the Scooby-Doo Where Are You intro, and it looks really good. I think what's really commendable about it is that they don't really compromise on the design of the characters. You know, when you do a lot of CG animation, you kind of change up the design a lot, but they really stuck to like this is what they looked like when they were on TV on Hanna-Barbera.
You know, if there's any studio that knows animation, you know, Warner Brothers is up there. It should, rightfully so. And so, you know,
I would say like. Now you gonna go.
What I'm saying is they have the artillery to make this movie look as good as they could.
The only other thing I can think of for me was some of the jokes I kind of liked, especially that kind of jab a little bit at like the Scooby-Doo franchise itself. Like I think, what was one that made me laugh? It was like a girl that was describing Shaggy, and she's like, yeah, he's talking like some guy who thought a teenager sounded like in the 60s or something like that. I'm like, okay.
He talks like a middle-aged man's idea of how a middle-aged man's idea of how teenage hippies talk. And I honestly think that line is a good summation of the whole idea of the movie,
right?
In general.
As you all can guess, I'm not a particularly great fan of this movie for a couple of reasons. One of them being, and I don't know why this has been a trend for a while now in Scooby Doo movies. I don't know if it started with the live action ones or whatever, but it feels like it has this need to separate Shaggy and Scooby from the rest of the gang for the entirety of the movie.
Yeah, I wrote that in my notes. I wrote in all caps, "Let's split up, gang." Because that's kind of what they do, like really early on in the movie. And they do the
And
same thing in the live action.
yeah, I mean, in the cartoon, they did do that, but that was just to like find clues or whatever. But they would be together for a good portion of it. But all of a sudden, for some reason, the farthest time I can remember this happening was in the live action movies. But for some reason, Shaggy and Scooby is just always separated from the rest of the gang, and that always bothered me because I feel like that takes away a lot of the character dynamics from these characters that we like. And especially if you're doing a soft reboot like this movie, to introduce these characters again, and you're going to spend the majority of the time of them apart. I think that's a real detriment.
Early on in the movie, within the first 10 minutes, you're watching them unite for the first time.
It's like reminding you what it is for those who don't know, but then it acts like you already know what Scooby-Doo is, and then they're like, oh, that's Shaggy and Scooby, they're always like that. But it's like we don't know that in this context of this movie.
It still feels, the whole rest of the movie kind of makes the first 10 minutes of the movie feel like it was almost an afterthought. Maybe it was some kind of Baby Yoda phase that kind of took over the culture, and that, people
Let's
with
baby
big
Scoob.
IP starting to realize, the people at Planters go like, oh, let's turn Mr. Peanut into a baby. Oh, let's turn Scooby-Doo back into like a
Puppy.
pup for a minute. Okay, now let's make a show about a young Rock.
Like that section I really kind of enjoyed too because it's just like what Scooby-Doo really is. It's like innocent kids just like solving mysteries like it always is. And I don't know, it always just kind of annoys me now that all of a sudden like Shaggy and Scooby, we're just gonna separate them because they're the most important and recognizable characters, so they're gonna do their own thing. Meanwhile, we're just gonna set the rest of these characters aside. I feel like you could have a lot of potential with like these new characters, having these characters interact off each other. I don't really know a lot of like the characterization of Daphne beyond she's like sweet, and that's what Simon Cowell has told me. Just like Simon Cowell literally told me who these characters were, and then I was just supposed to go with that.
Fred in this movie, and I think maybe Fred in general,
Right.
is he strikes me, especially in this movie, as the kind of person that you would see in a high school movie. It seems like that's sort of the function of casting Zac Efron as him in this time, even though he, in most iterations of Scooby-Doo, is voiced by Frank Welker, who is only Scooby in this movie. I'll refer to the Lego Batman movie for a moment, because in the Lego Batman movie, Ray Fiennes plays Alfred. And if you've seen the Lego Batman movie, there's kind of a scene when they, do a little of a crossover thing with having Lego versions of Warner Brothers property, and one of them is Harry Potter. Voldemort is played by Ray Fiennes. He plays Voldemort in this movie.
It's also voice acting. It's like it's not like you're having one person live action playing two characters. You could have just had Frank Welker be Scooby and Fred.
Since like the 90s of putting Robin Williams, an A-lister, into an animated movie, it kind of sort of snowballed into this sort of production model of making animated movies where you're casting celebrities in these roles, and then rather than eventually you're putting like athletes in animated movies.
LeBron James.
Them deals, yeah. Think of like what if Fred just became voiced by like Rob Gronkowski.
The unfortunate thing with animated movies casting wise now is that you have to think about marketability, because not only are you casting for the film, but you're casting for essentially who's going to show up on late night and talk about your movie. Because with animation, you can't look at it and know who's voicing it, right? And with live action, you'd be like, oh, that's a Zac Efron movie. I like that guy. I'm going to watch his movie. But in animation, you can't tell. When you hire voice actors, if you can do celebrities, you're basically doing it as a way so that they can also go on late night TV and promote your movie. Zac Efron, thanks for being on Jimmy Fallon. Oh man, High School Musical was funny, right? All right, go see Scoob.
I think that's the only reason why they still cast Frank Welker in the role is because they probably would have wanted to get someone else in the movie, but because seldom people in the industry can talk like Frank does as Scooby-Doo, that, they realize, okay, maybe it wouldn't be the best idea if we got like Timothy Chalamet to play Scooby in this movie. I feel like this movie, the voice cast of this movie is like through a list of people that they would have wanted to put
in a live action version
of this movie.
Yeah,
because like if you dressed the whole cast of the movie as their characters, it would still kind of look like, like cosplay.
I think this is like one of the only Scooby-Doo films that I've kind of had this issue with, is that, like, what's the blueprint of Scooby-Doo? It's them solving a mystery. And that's not really present in this movie. What kind of baffles me is that the mystery element is kind of just an afterthought. There be literal scenes where they're just observing evidence and then they give answers to where that evidence leads in the very same scene. I mean, the evidence was there, but there's like no hints, there's nothing, and none of these clues actually like lead up to anything anyway, or doesn't even lead them to stopping anything. The main antagonist still fulfills his mission regardless of whether they solve the mystery or not. The mystery element is like the biggest part of Scooby-Doo, and it's just not present in this movie, and it's very disappointing for me.
Yeah, it should be so much harder to mess up the Scooby-Doo formula. You can do whatever you want with Scooby-Doo as long as you follow just a few key plot points.
I don't think there's really an inciting incident to this mystery besides the fact that Scooby and Skaggy, Shaggy and Scooby get literally abducted by Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah,
and
Blue Falcon.
And then
again would play the character if it was live action.
They literally get abducted and are told what's happening and who's doing it. Literally the two things that Scooby-Doo, the whole franchise, that's like the two questions that they're trying to answer.
This movie is an entire 90-minute misdirection of everything you were expecting from something that was Scooby-Doo. They end it with the unmasking. They take off a mask and it's Simon Cowell. First off,
can we talk about
after they have that moment, they take his mask off again and it's back to being Dick Dastardly. They both want you to believe that this is the same Scooby that you're used to, but then they're like, okay, now we have to talk about why it's Simon Cowell. It seems like a mistake to be doing this in 2020.
I think this was also, in a sense, a reference to the fact that Scooby-Doo does have celebrity cameos way back when. Like the Harlem Globetrotters showed up for like a hot minute in an episode. And like, in later iterations, like John Cena would just show up for no reason. And it's not like it's far-fetched for Scooby-Doo to have celebrity cameos. It just surprises me how vital Simon Cowell's character was, not only just in the story, but in character motivations. Shaggy and Scooby, their whole reason why they deterred from the group was because Simon Cowell told them they were useless. And they keep saying, in the movie, we'll show Simon Cowell.
Simon Cowell is the inciting incident of this movie.
He is.
He is more involved in this movie story than quite possibly the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Exactly. He's what drives the story for the oddest of reasons.
It's how they set up the conflict, the initial conflict of the movie, which, again, yeah, it's a bit bizarre. It's not that I'm surprised to see it this way in a Scooby-Doo movie. It's that I'm surprised to see this in a 2020 movie, period. It feels like the script was written in 2008.
It feels like the script was written around the same time Shrek 2 happened, who also had Simon Cowell show up.
Yeah, that's in my notes. There's like some kind of like licensing agreement that Simon Cowell has with these production companies that makes him, appear doing his normal shtick. Remember, like, this is more than just Scooby-Doo. This is like Warner Brothers. This is pop culture. It's like, it's kind of everything that Animaniacs does.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Theirs is just a bit more scathing. Theirs is a lot more than just, here's a cameo. Here, they're going to do their same song and dance.
Cinematic universes have been popular since Marvel kind of perfected the formula way back when, 10 years ago. And movie studios ever since have been trying to do it. DC, Universal, and now Warner Brothers with this movie is trying to do a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. It's not a bad idea. The issue is that they're doing too much too quickly, in my opinion, because I feel like this movie feels like an Avengers type movie already, before we even get to these individual stories. It feels like we're already doing team-up movies to characters that I don't even know who they are. I guess what I'm trying to say is like when you introduce all these characters, you're taking away something. And what this movie is taking away is essentially what this movie was supposed to be about, the Scooby Gang. The mystery gang, because Shaggy and Scooby are forced to be with like Blue Falcon, and then like Fred, Velma, and Daphne are like on or kidnapped by Dick Dastardly at some point, and then Captain Caveman shows up for like 2 minutes, and a scene that could have been cut out, but it adds a lot more fluff and takes away a lot more of the interesting character dynamics that I enjoyed out of Scooby-Doo. And it just takes away the elements of Scooby-Doo that I like in general, which is the mystery.
Unless they plan on making these movies and actually expanding this universe that they've introduced with this movie, I don't see any point in doing it.
You're right.
I just just do the homework, just do the work if you plan on actually putting this forward. Don't just make this movie and hope that you'll hire the right people to make that for you. Like, right. Do you think that the Warner Animation Group needs its own Kevin Feige to kind of, serve as like kind of this puppet master for this franchise?
I think the main issue that studios have when trying to create a cinematic universe is that they try to do too much too quickly. If you look back to, let's say, like Universal with their Dark Universe, they try to do that and cite that with The Mummy. But the problem is with The Mummy is that they tried to integrate so many of the aspects of the cinematic universe into its own movie that it forgot to be its own movie.
One movie first.
The first one, you just got to make it one thing and then tease the next one at the credits. Something that does not feel like it's completely necessary to the story of the first one. It's an Easter egg.
It feels the same with this movie. Because, again, it's just all these elements of, hey, this is all Hanna-Barbera stuff that we could be having in the future, putting that in this movie. But, again, it's just taking away the fact that I'm wanting to watch Scooby-Doo. I'm not really here for Blue Falcon and his character arc. I was mainly here for Scooby-Doo. And then all of a sudden, it's just mainly about this dynamic and his issue. And if it was paced better, sure, maybe I would have enjoyed this movie, but it just kept cramming in too much Hanna-Barbera stuff in there for me to really enjoy this as a movie about Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, have a master plan. Don't Star Wars it. Don't just assume that because you're so big that you can, do whatever you want and no one's gonna care or have a problem with it.
It's weird that that's a critique for studios. Think before you do. Like,
yeah,
it's almost like that's good advice for
general anything.
And you know what I think it also is, Josh? I think it's just hard to grasp, but honestly, this movie just might have been for us. I don't think this movie was made for my enjoyment.
Oh no.
This movie was made for the enjoyment of children.
Yeah.
As well as their, partially the parents that would
normally
have watched this in the theater.
It's really weird being the age I am now and sitting in a movie theater by myself with both of those groups of people and no one else in there.
However, Brian, I will bring up, because after I watched this movie, I watched Scooby-Doo media that I grew up with, and I'm sure you grew up with too, which was the 90 VHS movies. It was
like Zombie Island and Cyber Chase,
Alien Invaders, Cyber Chase. And I watched Alien Invaders actually recently, and that's like to a T the Scooby-Doo formula. All of those movies are. I still got a lot of enjoyment out of it because it knew exactly what it was, and it essentially hit everything Scooby-Doo that I enjoyed while still being entertaining.
Is that not because you were already familiar with it? Is it harder to kind of separate a little? Like we can't really speak on this.
That's true.
We're victims of it, essentially.
That's true.
you can't prevent nostalgia glasses. You don't like really choose what you remember as a kid.
That's true.
You know, some things are going to hit a little bit differently.
I'm sure I'll see it. I'm sure I'll see a post 20 years from now being like, Scoob was the underrated gem. Why is nobody talking about this? And
If I were 25 years old when The Cat in the Hat came out, I don't think I would care about it. I would actually be a bit offended, I think. And I was like, okay, well, this is a funny movie. And over time, it becomes a little more complicated to talk about it really critically because you watched it with such a different perspective for the first time, and you had a better experience than if you had watched it for the first time, you know, as an adult. You know, it's part of like, it's kind of how I am about SpongeBob right now. Like, there's too many things. You're just, you know, the world is moving too fast for me in SpongeBob that I kind of have to, you know, I don't want to feel like an old man yelling at a cloud talking about how much better SpongeBob used to be. It just might be that like I don't really have to. It's not trying to keep up with me.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's not meant for us anymore.
It's trying to stay in a certain place within a certain audience. It's the audience that's, you know, that's changing, and so they need to adapt to that kind of audience.
Damn, Brian. I didn't think I would be going through an existential crisis in the middle of talking about Scoob, but thank you.
Quarantine really put me in a room with this movie for a long time.
You spent $20 on this movie.
I spent a fifth of $100 on this movie.
Do you have any other gripes that we didn't talk about, Brian, on your list?
Honestly, I do.
Okay, let's talk about them.
Well, I just want to go through. Okay, can we go through a little? Can I talk a little bit about the weird,
smaller things,
the weird needle drop moments in this movie? Some just kind of come to my mind. Let's go from the beginning of the movie. Okay, so it's about 20 seconds into the movie that you get the Warner Brothers logo, you know, the same one they've been doing for literally years, you know, decades even. They come out with the logo, and I don't know if you remember the live action James Gunn written Scooby-Doo movie that came out in 2002, how that opens, but it has that same intro, and then I think like a bite like comes out of the Warner Brothers badge, and then it turns around and it looks like Scooby-Doo's tag. It says SD, and you hear like some kind of reggae version of Scooby-Doo theme. You know, that's all fine and good for 2002. It seems
right,
but in today's world, I feel like I don't know how you would do a proper send up of that logo that's attached to a Scooby-Doo idea. But what they did not strike me as that either, because 50 seconds into the movie, you do a needle drop moment of California
Love
of a Tupac song, only used to like
show you Venice Beach.
Yeah, the setting of just the opening.
Again,
you know, does not have really much to do with Scooby-Doo.
I think in the movie they set up mystery headquarters there or something like that.
Well, why is that? Don't they have a place? Don't they have a town? Isn't Coolsville like the place?
Oh, it's Coolsville, right. Yeah, I don't know why they actually put a geography for where Scooby-Doo is. It's just like, it's a place. It's everywhere.
That song does not evoke just California in general. I think I would argue that it also invokes the 90s.
Yeah.
So it makes you believe that you're in 1990s Malibu, or sorry,
it is 90s Malibu because it's Shaggy when he's young.
He's on an iPhone.
Oh, right.
He's got earbuds and he's listening to podcasts.
Okay, because also
he has a 70s like playlist. He's got a 60s playlist.
Because Velma also is Ruth Bader Ginsburg as one of her costumes, and she wasn't Justice till like the mid 2000s.
Wait, wasn't she appointed under Clinton?
I thought she was appointed under Obama. No, she was.
Here we are talking the judicial branch in a review of Scoob. What an ill time to make an RBG reference. This movie does not know what year it is.
No, it doesn't.
So now imagine, because he has a phone and podcasts
And
What future is he in now?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg references.
So that's them as kids.
Mhm.
But most of the movie takes place with them as adults. So is this like way into the future now?
Yeah, because remember,
got to be at least 10 years,
Well-
aren't they like, they're like kids, right? High
well,
schoolers?
remember, Blue Falcon has like a really high-tech Falcon vehicle, whatever. And then also, if you remember, because the Mystery Machine got destroyed, remember it got updated with this weird Tesla futuristic-looking car or whatever. And
So are we to believe that this movie could take place mostly
in the future?
like even farther into the 2020s?
Yeah, I would
In a post-pandemic world?
in a post-pandemic
This movie is
world.
taking some risks. There is a moment that sticks out to me, and it's right before, it's right after they're. I think he puts the collar on Scooby right before they meet.
Oh yeah, there's a subplot with that.
Is when these kids ride over on bikes or skateboards, and it's Halloween, so they're in costumes, and these kids like come in, and I know you know what I'm talking about, but I just think it's so baffling how these kids, I would imagine they're dressed as clowns, but they have Juggalo face paint on them. I paused this movie today because I had the capability and I looked up pictures of the Insane Clown Posse. And I suggest you do that too. Just type Scooby-Doo clown makeup and then in a separate window, type in Insane Clown Posse and tell me that there's not some kind of inspiration on that.
I'll put the comparisons up right here.
Let me say
Goddamn.
one thing.
Very quickly, Josh. And it's that, what's strangest about this?
What?
Is that Warner Brothers had Daphne as Wonder Woman, Warner Brothers IP, very popular. They use Shallow from A Star Is Born, another Warner Brothers movie. They have these kids that are dressed as, they're not even dressed, they're just like wearing like their normal gear, right? Yeah. They've got clown makeup, Juggalo clown makeup on, when they could very easily have just made the kids look like Pennywise the Clown, because that's also Warner Brothers IP.
Or the Joker.
So this was a deliberate choice. There is a line that does make me laugh, and it's right after Scooby's being chased by the cop, and then he ends up with Shaggy, and they meet up.
What's his name?
Yeah, he says Scooby. Well, first he says snacks because he sees a Scooby snack, so he's just trying to read off of things that he's looking around seeing. And so the first thing he says is Scooby because he sees Scooby snacks, and then the cop asks for a middle name, and without thinking about it, he says Doobie. So I'm wondering what it was he saw to make him say that.
I think
that may be the greatest nut of all. This could be a thing that everybody knows about this character, but has never been mentioned once.
Right.
The entire.
It's been joked about in other Scooby-Doo media too.
Oh yeah, Mary Jane. That's my favorite name.
And also in that same movie when they do like they flash forward to see where the gang is, and there's like a pan down, and it's smoke coming out of like a van, and and Shaggy's like, "Oh, I'm so toasted," and he's cooking toast.
But also, this is the first time where he's a child, and that's happening. I just like to point that out. That's funny. But it's not that. He says his name is Scooby Dooby Doo. He comes up with a name, and then the cop says the line, "Well, if a dog has a middle name, that has no punishment for damages of theft," which is a weird way of giving Scooby Doo a get out of jail free card, because it kind of allows him to do whatever he wants. I'm not a huge fan of how the Blue Falcon's real name is Brian. I actually find that a little bit of a nuisance.
And that he's
in my enjoyment of the movie, because he seems quite afraid of everything
and does not seem to be.
And doesn't take responsibility for things. And
yes, he seems
quite like a ill-advised, irresponsible son who inherited everything from his father.
That likes childish things and probably likes Jurassic Park.
Let's move on. Yeah, honestly, I think the thing that stands out to me most about this movie is the juggalos, the juggalo moment.
Wow, this movie picked you up immediately. Any final thoughts on Scoob, Brian?
I feel like I'm gonna watch it again one day. Not like now, but I think maybe in 25 years I'll think about this movie and go, yeah, well, I mean, this movie did kick off the most successful franchise in human history, And so, might as well go back. It's like how people want to, go back and watch the first Iron Man movie and be like, oh yeah, I want to see how all this stuff started out before it unfolded into something that was worth billions of dollars.
Sure. Well, I guess the only other thing I'll say on Scoob is that, yeah, check back into this video 20 years from now if we're right, and that this has become like a nostalgic classic for people. I'm very interested to see.
Mystery Incorporated is still utilizing a Tesla mystery machine.
Use this as a nice time capsule for how people have perceived this movie and just analyze how that might have changed in the future. I'm very interested to see how this will work. But thank you so much, Brian, for coming in. Pretty much letting out everything, all you needed to say about Scoob. Well, check out Scoob if you want on HBO Max. Thank you so much, Brian, for joining me. If you have any other movie suggestions that you'd like me to watch, let me know. Thank you so much, and I will see you later.
If there's anything that needs to be known about this movie, it's that I paid $20 to see it.